welcome to the rollout of Shell LiveWIRE here in Trinidad and Tobago. I am Sandrine Rattan, Project Coordinator responsible for stakeholder relations and communications at Youth Business Trinidad and Tobago, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies this morning. I'd like to start by recognizing our esteemed panelists and moderator. On my extreme right, our moderator is Mrs. Anna Leah Ferrero, Finance Manager. Next to Anna, we have Mr. Omadat Maharaj, Agricultural Economist, Dr. Thackeray Dax Driver, President and CEO of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Ronald Roach, CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Solid Waste Management Company Limited, and last but by no means least, Mrs. Raquel Moses, Country Manager, Microsoft Trinidad and Tobago. Our officials from Shell Trinidad and Tobago, sitting in the front, we have Mr. Leslie Boren, Head Social Performance, Ms. Kelly Marie Patel, External Relations Advisor. Next to Kelly, we have YBTT's General Manager, and I'm proud to have him as my General Manager, Mr. Shedron Collins, Ms. Lara Quintrell Thomas, sitting at the extreme right in the second row. She's our Director, Mr. Marcus Sunkow, sitting next to Ms. Quintrell Thomas. The YBTT team, they're outside, but I just need to call their names and they are tagged. Any questions or queries after the event, feel free to liaise with them. Daniel Morrow, Marcus Dulga, Jonathan Khan, Candice Calendar Lewis, and Byron Barras. I would also like to quickly acknowledge the presence of some of our major stakeholders, Dr. Kieran Swift, Business Unit Manager, Economic Development Advisory Board, Ms. Dano Suku, President of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago and her team, Ms. Ambika Medina, who is a lecturer in entrepreneurship at COSTAT, and also Sajad Hamid. He's also a lecturer in entrepreneurship at COSTAT. He's also one of YBTT's facilitators. Also Gerard Thomas, CEO and founder of Launch Rocket. And of course, warm welcome to all our wonderful attendees and other stakeholders who would be, who are on their way. I'd now like to invite our first speaker, Mrs. Nirmala Maharaj, who is Director, Internationalization and Institutional Relations at the Arthur Lockjack Graduate School of Business.
Good morning. So, on behalf of UWI-LJGSB, it's an honor. I know Sandrine has done a wonderful job in welcoming each and every one of you. However, permit me to do the ceremonial duties on behalf of the school. Welcome. We're very pleased to host this very important Shell LiveWIRE entrepreneurial event, exploring new industries. I send a special welcome to the entire Shell Trinidad and Tobago team here this morning. And just to say, Shell TNT is one of our sponsors for our upcoming 2018 DLIC conference, which will be held on May 24th at the Hyatt Regency, featuring Professor Luke Williams. So he's the Executive Director of the Berkeley Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I also say it's very special and warm welcome to all YBTT representatives here this morning, our panelists on stage, all stakeholders within the Shell LiveWIRE entity, our entrepreneurs present this morning. And what is very important about this event, and Shell as well as YBTT should certainly be commended for their foresight in building skill set and providing practical tools for you, our entrepreneurs here today.
Thank you, Nirmala. Next up, I invite Mr. Shedron Collins, General Manager of YBTT, to bring remarks.
I'm here to bring remarks on behalf of Youth Business Trinidad and Tobago, and I just want to say thank you for all for coming and coming out early. All right. I know when we first advertised the program, after a week, we only had 30 persons registered, and well, today look at the room is packed. Now, this is really movement for YBTT, we started engaging in Shell in 2014 and really supporting entrepreneurs within their line communities of Mayaro, Wayaguari, Blanchishes, looking at those persons to support those entrepreneurs, and then we expanded to a national program. Now, this is really now the new transition that we're moving into to the LiveWIRE program, where we're focusing on 3 main industries. So instead of moving and building those entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs, looking at how we can now increase that support, that value chain of those industries, and those 3 particular industries being energy solutions, resource, recycling and waste management, and agriculture and agro-processing. Right? So we felt that there was a need to start a discussion, and that's why we brought all these panelists here today, to start a discussion on those 3 topic areas before we launch the program, before we roll out of the program.
Thank you, Shadran. Before proceeding, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Wendy Samsundar, who is Corporate Manager Business Development at the Agricultural Development Bank, one of our key stakeholders. Wendy, a warm welcome. It's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Leslie Warren, Head of Social Performance at Shell Trinidad and Tobago, to officially welcome you and provide an overview for today.
Thank you, Sandrine, and good morning to everyone. Good morning to the panelists, fellow colleagues from Shell, representatives of YBTT staff and board, stakeholders involved in the program, entrepreneurs, members of the media. Shadron spoke about the previous program that we had with YBTT, and there has been a significant shift. That program was implemented under the BG Trinidad and Tobago rubric. Of course, BG is no more and now Shell, so I would give an overview of the program as designed. I think he gave a slight flavor of the program as it was under BG, but I'm now going to give you a little more flavor into how the Shell LiveWIRE program is designed. First of all, Shell LiveWIRE is a global flagship enterprise development program with a vision to strengthen local economies by promoting entrepreneurship, innovation, and meaningful employment. As a component of Shell Trinidad and Tobago's investment strategy, LiveWIRE aims to support growth stage startups in underdeveloped economic sectors. These sectors have been identified, and as Cedron mentioned, as recycling and waste management, energy solutions, and agriculture and agri-processing. The program will be delivered by Youth Business Trinidad and Tobago, and entrepreneurs will receive training and support to grow their businesses through access to investors, export consultation, financial awards, and many other services. Today we host the Value Chains panel discussion, bringing together industry leaders to share their experiences and insight among this audience of entrepreneurs. This panel discussion seeks to present a healthy discourse on new sectors and new industries towards diversification of the economy, a diversification which is best achieved through entrepreneurship. The National Shell LiveWIRE National Program is an accelerator program that supports growth stage startups in the sectors aforementioned, with special emphasis on the role which digital solutions can play in enhancing the delivery of these sectors. During a 7-month period, entrepreneurs receive training and are supported to grow through access to investors, export consultation, financial awards, monthly master classes, and peer-to-peer technical advisory groups, which we call sector circles. Post completion of the program, entrepreneurs can access cohort networking opportunities, cohort meetups, over a 2-year period. Business growth factors are monitored, evaluated over the 2-year program and include 1, job creation, 2, entry to the Shell supply chain, and 3, export of products or services. In conclusion, let me say why Shell LiveWIRE we think is critical to this time in Trinidad and Tobago's development. As part of our program, entrepreneurs will receive 4 months of training designed to provide technical focus, develop their business leadership skills, and manage resources. To access to 4 monthly master classes led by local entrepreneur icons, ongoing peer-to-peer networking support for 11 months post-program completion, access to a global community of Shell LiveWIRE alumni, individualized one-on-one consultation with an export consultant, peer-to-peer technical advisory support through the monthly sector circle I mentioned previously, and finally, financial incentives through the award of recognition prizes upon graduation.
Thank you, Leslie. I think the greatest message in this video is the positive impact which the Shell LiveWIRE program has had on the lives of so many entrepreneurs globally and now here in Trinidad and Tobago, soon to benefit. Before proceeding further, I would like to acknowledge the presence of YBTT's chair, Mrs. Dale Loughlin. Welcome. We move now to, I think, the most important juncture of the program for today, which is our panel discussion, which will be moderated by Mrs. Anna Leah Ferrero, Finance Manager at Shell Trinidad and Tobago. Anna has worked in Shell for over 20 years. She has worked in both upstream and downstream in several countries, including Argentina, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Russia, and Trinidad and Tobago. Currently, she's the head of finance for Shell Trinidad and Tobago and a Shell director for Atlantic LNG. She has previous experience as a director of New Zealand entities and 2 joint ventures in Russia. She's Argentinian and has an economics and business degree from Universidad Torquato de Tella. It's my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Anna Leah Ferrero, Finance Manager at Shell Trinidad and Tobago, to take you through the panel discussion exploring new industries.
Good morning, everyone. I'm extremely excited to be here this morning. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity and getting me out of the office for a whole morning. I think that's the bonus for me in this day. I'm just so pleased to be in front of this panel. This is just a fantastic opportunity for us to talk about the program and to really look into some of the areas where we think LiveWIRE can make a difference. So with no further ado, you can stand, you can walk. I think you can, feel free to use the stage.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to be here, especially in the presence of so many of you from the sector. Mrs. Suku, of course, who heads the Agriculture Society. I know that she played a very strong role in mobilizing a lot of the younger faces in the audience. I see senior people from the Ministry of Agriculture, the state agencies, and so on. And my slide is not on, so we keep talking. Meanwhile, of course, the agriculture and the economy. Yeah, so agriculture and the economy, we look for opportunities here, of course, and each slide, of course, I may just venture on the border of 15 minutes. I was working with Trinidad time to have a little extra leeway, but might not have Argentinian time. So the point of the slide is, of course, yes, the pepper is very beautiful, and that's the heart of my little talk this morning. We could look at this pepper, and what do we see inside? We see something very hot, and we want to look at the heart of the issues. Very often we talk about bad access roads, farmers always complaining, lots of bacchanal, Commissioner State Lands went home for a holiday, whatever. But we also see some other things here. Deep in the heart of this troubled industry has some issues that we have not been able to penetrate over time. And while the people lament about it, farmers, fishers, and so on, I don't think we have a strong handle on passing this industry to the next generation. You'll also see some water drops beneath the fruit, and of course it signals that agriculture is very water intensive. So when we talk about production agriculture, we need to talk about water for agriculture in Trinidad, which is a whole separate talk. But it also signals to me what we call the blood, sweat, and tears of farmers, because of course this industry is not always, like fishermen say, every day is fishing, not every day is catching, all right? So we want to have, just on the heels of the Honorable Prime Minister's recent seminar, where he spoke about our oil, our gas, our future, I just want to spur a short conversation, of course, on alternate reality, because we should focus on a robust agriculture sector. And I think all of us woke up this morning, we were thankful for life, we had a word of prayer, and more than likely we had something to eat, yeah, or drink. And of course that signals or sends a signal in effect to where we go. In 2015, there was, of course, before that, prevailing and continuing now, changes to the world energy market, in which, of course, the main operator here, Shell, operates, and my colleague here from the Energy Chamber will have his own views and so on. But in January 2015, I wrote this article. It was really a sort of commentary that spoke about quieting the noise in Trinidad and Tobago, because we talk about the money is not the same, and people, the seats started to get a bit uncomfortable. For those of us who feed off the fat and flesh of the land, it's very difficult. So I just want to start by showing you just little 2 paragraphs. You could read it without me reciting it, but I said then that oil may soon be worth more in the ground as a tale of an industry that blah, blah, blah. But the point is, we needed a series of supportive policies, policies and programs over the years. So economic diversification remains an obscurity for Trinidad and Tobago, and this conversation could strengthen that. So the economy remained heavily dependent on our energy resources, and the private sector, considered pivotal in this role for diversification, continues to be shallow and narrow with weak intersectoral diversity and production links. So it sounds very Guardian-worthy, it was in the newspaper and all of that, but we need to connect that as practitioners. And lo and behold, some years later in 2018, some hours just before we came here, this was a news headline that manufacturers are saying that it's cheaper to import than buy from our local farmers. So who do we, what do we really have to say? Is it that the farmers are the ones to blame, or are they victims of their own reality in the way that they operate and so on? So before the end of the presentation, of course, we'll tie the conversations. I said that in addition to the proliferation of fragmented, uncoordinated policies and strategies, because we have a broad network. We have the overarching development vision for the country and so on. Right now we operate within Vision 2030. We have a medium-term policy framework, and we filter all the way right down to a sector strat plan, food and nutrition goals for the population and all of that. The ASTT has their advocacy and their work plan and so on. The different elements of the sector, but of course, being constructed in that way, we have seriously undermined the implementation, monitoring, accountability, and the usual things that we could talk about. But specifically to support innovation, research, and development, which is supposed to drive this diversification talk, it has been very dismal to that extent. And of course, all of it is linked to this Shell program this morning. I think it contributes in that direction. I said there that there are factors that inhibit private sector growth and competitiveness. And all of these, of course, but if we don't address them, the long and the short is that although we have the initiatives, we will continue to perpetuate those problems. So we talk about the perennial problems in agriculture, cost of labor, availability. The younger ones among us can't have access to land, it's difficult, prohibitive, and so on. But it's all linked. Agriculture is not the future. Energy is not the future, and everyone else, of course, we are all experts. We all have a passion for what we do. We could see the world revolving around us. It's very easy to spin in a circle. But the point is, the agriculture sector is connected to energy, it's connected to other sectors. I put here, of course, a very simple thought that we cooking with gas. Use that slang in Trinidad, we cooking with gas. So it's all fuel. There's fertilizer, there's all the inputs and so on. And we run in an interconnected society. But before I start, of course, the majority of this audience here is agriculture, which is very beautiful. So you notice that my fellow panelists all come from some nice organization. Yeah? See that? Except me. So it sets the tone. Yeah? So if I am on stage talking to you, you know the background we're coming from. So we talk about leadership. We want these younger people. We want to take control of the future. We speak about politics and all of that. It's not the forum for that. But the point is there is a future of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, where's the leadership? How do we define leadership? How does leadership emerge? How do we foster that environment for someone to benefit from this thing called first mover advantage? So our former Prime Minister had this to say, and he said, in relation to leadership of his party, it always sticks with me when we talk about leadership, which is, he says it is not like a cow. I cannot transfer it to you. I cannot sell it to you or whatever. It cannot be bought. So I cannot tell you about leadership. I cannot tell you that you need to be the leaders of tomorrow and give you the keys to the city and so on. But that is the human desire. The human desire has to be to want better. So in 2016, around the time of Valentine's Day, we did this media release where we said that farmers urged Trinidad and Tobago to sow seeds of love. Yeah? Of course, that has a double sort of entente meaning. Sorry. It has a double meaning because we talk about crime in the country, you know, different. The text of it was a bit different. We called for some things over the years, and I was very proud to see Her Excellency, Madam Paula May Weeks, in her inaugural speech, of course, using similar language to nurture the seeds of love. Yeah, everyone listened to her discourse? Very motivating, and I love that she could link. You know, her play on words could link back to the agriculture sector where we need to, she started with plant, produce, and so on, but there's one step before where we need to plan for our future. So, I mean, there are other things we have in the environment, eat local day, grow food home, do all these nice things. So we want to tap into her vision, but, you know, it's so interesting that when you look at social media, when I see that motivation, I'm seeing people talking about her marital status, yeah? So they're asking, are we accustomed to all these norms about whatever? And I just want to put something out in the atmosphere, which is, I spent the last month in India, and I realized that the state I was in was Uttar Pradesh. The chief minister is Yogi Adityanath. And for those of you who are familiar with Indian culture, of course, him being a yogi, sort of Hindu monk and so on. The point is, he has no marital affinity. So immediately the perception of corruption was removed because he have no family and no real friends to fatten. That's one thing. So in India they say that if the government tries to spend $1, 20 cents might reach the people they try to spend it on. So to the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, no marital status. So the perception of friends and so on, and there's this focus by them on their work, and I think of course there's probably a perfect opportunity to welcome Her Excellency on behalf of the sector. So we jump to agri-entrepreneurship. We try to talk about leadership, think about what really that is. I could ask you, what then is agri-entrepreneurship? We use this word, agripreneur. Yeah, you see that online. We talk about it. We talk about entrepreneurship being small business in Trinidad. Yeah? So we think about all these people who make doubles, tamarind ball, red mango. You know, we kind of link that language into entrepreneurship. Yeah? But do you know that there's somebody else, some other part of the world this morning, who is thinking about how to create the next aircraft? Yeah? So while we here talking about red mango, whatever we want to talk about, somebody is thinking that, you know, that's such a vast headspace that person is operating. And even within our organizations right now, there's something called intrapreneurs. Yeah? When you have idle time, you must read about intrapreneurs. Those are the people empowered to think independently and drive organizations and our future. They don't need to operate by themselves and so on and stifle. So we talk about entrepreneurship. The farmers in the room, people from the university always telling me what to do, whatever. Ask them if they just plant anything. You know, they have a tomato tree growing, they come and tell me about whatever. So that's how it is, you know. You might remember this occasion here when this cow gave birth. Everybody remember this last year? Very phenomenal. Read the first line. I don't know if you could see it there. The farmer says that he is willing to pass on his knowledge to the university. So our extension support, not only university, Ministry of Agriculture and so on, this guy is willing to pass it on to us. So we laughed about the tamarind ball, the red mango and so on. So this is a meeting I had a few months ago with some people from Oulu University in Finland. So we sort of undercapitalized this concept of the diaspora. I don't know how we really tap into them for some economic exchange, but the point is they brought something for me. I don't know if you could see it there too clearly. So it's well packaged, well labeled, has some language difference. You see the people there, we were laughing at it in the top picture. You know what is that candy? Looks familiar? Job Job. They travel around the world with a pack of Job Job to give, you know. That's so interesting. And we could see, you go past through duty free in Piaco Airport. I don't know where you see locally outside of the workers. You go to Store Bay, you might see some local candies and so on, tamarind ball, Benny ball, and all of that. But printing and packaging, how do we get that going, you know? So it seems small in the scale of things. They compare it to a barrel of oil and so on, which is still small in comparison to the price of a barrel of pepper mash right now. So we need to, of course, change the way that we think about things. And if you start going along that lines, there's this Bill Gates guy, you know, some of you might know him. And he said some years ago, we need banking, of course, but do we need banks? You know, And today, if you look around, there are of course a lot of people who would try to debunk this thing, but these brick and mortar establishments, not necessarily. You could run a business from home, online, you could market and so on. My wife operates like that. So you could do different things, different media and so on. So the question for us is, we need food, but do we need agriculture? Yeah. So you look at some of the conversations around the way we go about investment and allocation and so on. And you wonder, we need this thing, and you look back at the sector. Of course, we've been here since Adam and Eve. I don't know when oil came, maybe sometime after. But 56 years ago, when we got independence, we had some things happening since then to now. The agriculture sector today is different. We still need food, but the sector and the environment we operate in, there's rural to urban migration, land value. Yeah? The cost of doing agriculture vis-a-vis rental properties and so on. We look at the food import bill, you look at the budgetary allocation, and then we say, well, you know, how do we sort of invest in the sector? What is the investment, taste and preferences and so on? We talk about that. But if it is from birth, we condition our children to eat these baby cereals, peach flavored, apple flavored and all of that. When they get into primary school, they have nothing like cassava, fries and kalaloo and all of that. Local food becomes punishment. We have done it to them at birth. And those people who we started to feed cereals in this country are now the millennials. They are people like you and me. We work somewhere, we have money to spend. That's what we know about. Yeah? So it's very difficult, and the question, of course, is, can we still benefit from this age-old tradition? Yeah? Is there still the opportunity? So you look at the little data here. So this is the trend in food imports. The orange bars are, we do actually export and re-export. Upward trend. So we're looking for food and nutrition, population is growing, people to sustain, and so on. We see a rise in NCDs. We don't want to cut out the imports up front, but we allocate more money to health, cut out food and all of that after the fact. So you have a lot of conversations linked to this thing, health of the population and so on. But the trend is we're looking somewhere for the food, all right? A lot of topics that could pull out from that, of course. We talk about price, quality, similar to the manufacturers and so on. We look at the farm level. Yeah, you investigate at the farm level for those of you into production and so on. And the point is, farming families have the same dreams and aspirations as working class people. They line up in T&Tech to pay the same bill, B-Mobile or wherever, to pay the phone, telephone. Their children needs to be educated. They do all of that, same fuel prices and so on. But the philosophy is different. We talk about subsidies. And if you go to India, they give, of course, different incentives. There's another slide on that. But the point is, if it is we value the food and we recognize that these people don't earn monthly incomes, fortnightly incomes, they're not guaranteed that income, then how do we expect the same of them? How it is that philosophy rolls out? So, but food imports, we could continue to demonize it. It's very easy. But the point is, when these concentrates come in, billions of dollars in intermediary products and so on, yeah, as the previous slide showed, but they go into a manufacturing sector. They leave, the port of Port of Spain. They leave the port of Port of Spain, they go to Diamond Vale in the manufacturing estate, they produce something. One of it is ketchup. And if you go to Guava, the opposite end of the country in a little parlor, you'll see that pack of ketchup selling. Yeah? So it creates thousands of jobs, that's all. So all of it is not for final human consumption. So you don't need to demonize people for the one little piece of chocolate you buy, whatever. It's not about that. It's about training up the industry to satisfy those demands, which we still will talk about. In India, of course, again, just by comparison, we have mango, guava. Same here. In India, there are 700 plus varieties of mangoes. So they asked me, being an Indian, of course, of origin, you know how many varieties are there? So proud to see this Indian from somewhere in the Caribbean. They know Brian Lara and all of them, never hear about me, whatever. So, you know, like, how many mango they have? So I said, we have long, short, red, brown, achar, you know what I mean, whatever. So they talk about that, they talk about guava. They developed this variety called lalit, which is these photos here. Notice the size of the trees. 1 hectare of this particular guava bears, after about 6 years, when it's full bloom, between 40 to 60 tons. You ever see a ton of guava? 1 ton? I see 4 in a heap for 20. Right? So these are the levels. But they didn't get there that fast. There's a whole, this propagation thing, this is just one shed. One, in the month of April, they will have over this production propagation farm alone, of course there are others, will have over 250,000 mango trees to put out for sale. Yeah? In Trinidad, you could go to St. Joseph Nursery and buy mango right now. We could walk from here to there. I can't run so far, but you could walk, right? None. And the price is $35 to $45. Price in India, 50 cents TT. 5 rupees, yeah? So if an Indian farmer plants a mango today, right? And one of my farmers in Trinidad plants a mango today, we can't even begin to talk about processing nothing here. Of course, I just learned that they don't use the fruit for fresh consumption as we do. Of course, different varieties are exported, all of that. But it forms a big part of their spice trade. It's dried, a lot of community development projects and so on that dry it, they mill it into powder. That powder is actually traded on something like a stock exchange, like how we trade the wheat and grains. It's so significant in the spice trade of India, large volumes. So we need to focus on production. Okay? We could talk about that. Before we need to process, we need to produce. You got this process. So, policy support, which identifies strategic programs such as Shell LiveWIRE and projects aligned to measurable outcomes and its financial, human, and technical resources and so on. Of course, agreed? And we must be mindful of all these other challenges that we face. We are now in a recession, of course. It's not all the freebies that are still available, but we have private sector support, which is 1 more minute. So this is what the Oxford Business Group had to say. We go around this thing, we just jump past. I just wanted to say that India is 1.3 billion people. That state is 204 million people. Trinidad is only 1.3. And there's evidence that agro-processing is their #1 economic spinner. In that state, these are some different projects that they do. They develop a new variety of Portugals. See it there? You can grow it in your house as a plant. Not a big old tree, whatever. Look at this photo here. What that says in English is that that mountain of food was grown by prisoners. There's nothing like a free pass, no free meal in India. Yeah? So, and that not other than feeding themselves, it's feedstock for processing. They have different programs. Retired white-collar people into honeybees, must have the pineapple drink there. All of that. Last slide, which is there's services. We talk about processing, you know, tamarind ball, red mango, all of that, very nice. But think about Uber. Let's discuss the first one, which is Uber. We know about Uber, you call this thing, rent a taxi. And what they told us is when we went to India, we needed to get there, of course, but we didn't buy the aircraft. We bought a ticket. You use the craft for a few hours, so you don't have the burden of storing the aircraft, maintenance, acquiring the asset, and so on. Similarly, is the way they treat with tractors and heavy equipment. They don't have a philosophy of every farmer owning a tractor. They are very small, just like us, small farmers, 1 hectare, 2 hectares. They call them small and marginal. So you call the service recognized across India. And you know, there are different tractor service providers in here that come do your land prep and so on. I know the STT has a service like that, but these are things. So we remove the burden of a farmer from buying, of course, the asset which he needs to pay over time, and we look at his feasibility. And this is the last slide, just to say that if anybody could recognize this beautiful cake here, I'll tell you what it is in the discussion. So we talk about the alternate reality, just to close, and the alternate reality is there are 1.3 million of us in this country. We eat about 3 meals per day on average. Yeah? Some eat more, some eat less, so it balances. Let's just say that's 4 million meals altogether served per day in this country. And we have doubles. National food starting $5, restaurant meals a few hundred. Yeah? If you take $25, that is $100 million in meals are served per day in this country. You go 365 days a year, that is looking like $36.5 billion changes hands with respect to food. Yeah? Might be very naive because we have different ways of calculating GDP and so on. I think the estimates provided by Shell's research was about 10 billion. But if you look at it that way, huge opportunity. But we have not invested in the productive capacity of the sector to meet the needs of industry, which is agro-processing, food manufacturing. So that's one thing we need to keep in mind. And the other thing, the other side to that is, of course, we need to focus on those industries in which we possess a comparative and competitive advantage. The obvious things, we import ground provisions, basic meats and so on. Some of these things which you think we come from here, of course, are imported either from the CARICOM trade, Dominican Republic and so on. So we need, when we talk about agro-processing, a lot of issues we could talk about and so on. And that's, the last point is the information provided to me showed some evidence about the cocoa industry and so on. You know, it's very topical, it's traded, it earns foreign exchange, I imagine, and all of that. But the point is, Sham Rampasad from the Cocoa Marketing Cooperative last week, he gave to me when I came from India a little bag of a new thing he's making, a cocoa powder, like instant chocolate, yeah? Very beautiful. If I was an emotional person, I'd probably cry when I had this thing. Very, very beautiful thing. But the point is, how do we, other than telling him thanks, how do we put the value of these things into the hands of the people who need it the most? Yeah? He gave it to me in a plastic wrapping. That's not on shelves. It's a long way from the shelf. But the point is, all I could do is pat him on the back. It's like going to a funeral. Yeah? So somebody has died, you go there, you know, you pat the family on the back, you know, whatever. So it makes them feel good. They feel good about themselves. It does nothing for the dead. And similarly, me congratulating him does nothing for the cocoa industry. So you as future farmers, you as people of today and people of tomorrow, there's a whole picture. This agro-processing thing is very different. Agriculture is very different from the other sectors. All of us are experts. All of us have different worldviews. And of course, when the floor is open for conversation, I'm sure we could spur at them how it is they could help people like you change the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing some of your, very personal stories, and it looks like you had a great time in India.
Of course.
So now we move on to Dax, who's going to share a little bit the energy sector, and as most of you probably know, he is the president of the Chamber of Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago. So with that, welcome, Dax.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk a little bit, first of all, about the context in which we have at the moment globally and in Trinidad, and then the opportunities that creates for small businesses in what we're calling energy solutions. So these is really around how do we provide energy and save energy for the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, so it's not what we're talking about, the traditional way we think about energy with large, big companies producing oil and gas and people providing services to them. I'm trying to think a little bit more broadly about what we mean by energy and what energy does for us. So we're looking really in the renewables and the energy efficiency space. So the global context is working.
Point at the screen.
Point at the screen. Oh. Okay. So the energy transition. So a lot of people are talking about the energy transition now globally, and about what's happening with the sources of energy which the world is going to need. So the world needs more energy for the foreseeable future as economies are growing. That is going to come from a mix of different sources. Fossil fuels are going to continue to play a very important part in that, and renewables are going to play an increasingly important part in that. There's a lot of different estimates how this is all going to work as you're projecting forward, and there's different views about when changes happen, but there is a basic direction which everyone is seeing, which is that we're going to have a bigger mix of sources of energy in the future. We're also probably going to get it to a stage where economic growth and increased energy use are no longer linked one-to-one as they have been in the past. There are now economies in the world which have delinked their economic growth from their energy growth. You're seeing that in Europe in particular, and in Japan, where they can grow the economy without their energy use growing because they're becoming more efficient in how they use energy. The fuel which we're seeing falling away, most projections see falling away quickest is coal, the dirtiest of the fossil fuels. That's being followed then by oil. Natural gas, good news for Trinidad, natural gas, and good news for Shell. Natural gas shows, most of the models show continued growth of natural gas over the next couple of decades. But this is the pattern where you're seeing this increased use of renewable energy sources. The big thing that's driving that with the change in oil is transport. So all of the projections are now seeing that we're going to increasingly move to a situation where transport is being increasingly provided by electric vehicles. There'll be hiccups along the way as this is happening, and we saw with Uber just suspending their self-driving car program with an accident just, I think, 2 days ago. But I think the direction is clear, that we're moving to electrifying the transport system around the world. That is going to change the demand for oil in particular. So one of the takeaways for that is that Trinidad needs to get on and produce the oil we have now, because it may not be so valuable in the future. It's not that we're going to stop using oil. The world's going to go on using oil for many, many, many decades to come. It's just that there'll be more sources of oil, so then the price becomes, and the demand decreases, so the price then is challenged. And in the Trinidad context, now, so that's the global context. There's a direction moving. In the Trinidad context, we have a specific context around our energy. Our primary source of energy for our economy has been natural gas. And we saw a very, very, very huge, big increase in natural gas usage in Trinidad. Most of it, almost all of it, exported, but a big increase in our natural gas production from the 1990s through to about 2010. We then saw that production fall off, and we have installed demand from all of the plants in the country at this level, 4 billion cubic feet of gas. A day. We're now producing significantly less than that, which has been the underlying problem which we have had in our economy over the last few years. We are doing some things to bring new fields on, so we are seeing this beginning to go back up, but you have to always bring on new fields every year to even maintain our current level. That's a challenge for our economy. That's not what I'm talking about today, but what I'm talking about is the fact that we have this shortfall in gas. So we have more demand than we have supply. So then we have to become very careful about how we're using that gas. Trinidad went through its history back in the 1990s and the 2000s was about increasing demand. We were trying to always increase demand for natural gas, so new gas would come on. So we were building ammonia plants, we were building methanol plants, we were building Atlantic. And we were very wasteful in how we used the energy as well. Now the story has changed. The story changed in 2010, and everyone in the country went happily along the same way of doing things when we were actually in a different situation where we needed to be reducing demand for natural gas. And somehow it's taken us almost a decade to realize that this is the case. But I think people are now realizing that we need to reduce demand for natural gas. And there's the obvious one is in electricity generation. We are extremely inefficient in how we have been using gas for electricity generation. We talk about subsidized electricity because we all know Trinidad's electricity is incredibly cheap. Okay, and sometimes people talking about, oh, Trinidad's electricity is expensive. No, it's not expensive. It's one of the cheapest in the world. Just as a fact, we have very, very, very cheap electricity. Okay, it's not subsidized. The electricity is not subsidized. What's subsidized is the gas that goes into electricity is subsidized. So this is the cost that we have been paying, that gas is being bought at in order to make electricity. So the NGC sells that gas to TNTech at that level. If NGC was free to sell the gas to the petrochemical market, which has a demand for gas and which is not being met, they would be approximately able to sell it. This is a derived number which we sort of calculated as the petrochemical number. So the gap between what they've actually been selling it at and what they could have been selling it at is the opportunity cost, which we have faced in this economy from having this cheap gas going into electricity. So if we can sell less gas at this level, at the cheaper price for electricity generation, and more at this level, that's a lot of additional revenue for our economy. So that's why so reducing the amount of gas we're sending to electricity makes just very good economic sense for the country at the moment. It also means when we need to think about of the price that we're actually effectively paying is this blue line. So when we talk about, oh, we can't bring renewables on because electricity is so cheap in the country, that's because we're not paying the full cost of it. If we were actually calculating the full cost, then renewable energy becomes very economic actually to do now. So the renewable energy is not a nice to have for our economy, it is actually an economic driver to have now, today. It makes economic sense. So we need to be bringing the renewable energy into the system. Let's just go into a little bit more detail of how it's worked out. There's another part of the energy use in the country. So we talked about electricity. We also use energy in transport. And we subsidize people, everyone's transport, through this fossil fuel subsidy on gasoline and diesel. And it costs us, at the peak, it was costing us $7 billion TT dollars a year to subsidize all of us driving big SUVs and driving, ourselves all into work and sitting in traffic. Even now, with prices, with the increase in diesel and gasoline prices, this still subsidy is almost working out at about $1 billion TT dollars that we're subsidizing people to drive for transport fuels. So obviously, if you get rid of that, there is potential, if we do things differently in the transport sector, to have that money then coming into the economy and doing other things as well. So that's where opportunities also exist in the transport part of the use of energy as well. Okay, so let me just go through some of the areas where I think there's a lot of potential. The power sector first of all. Obviously, as I said, Trinidad's story is about increasing demand for gas for many years. That's how we were thinking. As we were doing that, we built some very inefficient power stations, which are single cycle power stations. So half of Trinidad's electricity still comes from single cycle power stations. About half now is coming from combined cycle, which is from the TGU plant in La Brea. But we still have half our electricity coming from single cycle. That means you are wasting more than half of the energy you put to make the electricity, you waste there at the power station. Okay? When you move to combined cycle, you take that heat and you put it back into producing electricity as well. And you can get to much greater levels of efficiency. So that is just a waste. We are just wasting energy at the moment, putting it up into the atmosphere as heat. If you capture that heat and put it into the second cycle, then you increase the amount of electricity you produce for using the same amount of gas. That creates an opportunity for investment. That's really an opportunity for probably bigger companies, not entrepreneurs, but as you're doing that, it creates processes for people selling services to do that into the power generation sector to help them be more efficient in how they use the gas which they're burning. The other thing that in a lot of countries they manage to do is take that waste heat and put it into an energy form which is actually usable. Okay? That creates an opportunity, I think, for entrepreneurs. Because if you do the right sort of deals with the power generation companies, you can actually take that waste heat and put it into other processes. So there's an obvious one in the petrochemical sector. They need a lot of steam in their processes, and you have the power gen plant in Point Lisas, and if you can bring that steam into the Point Lisas plants, that is an obvious source. But you can do other things. In other countries, there's a Trinidadian company who has implemented air conditioning systems for hotels in the Dominican Republic using waste heat from power generation. It's a Trinidadian company working in the Dominican Republic. They're trying to do the same thing here as well, using waste heat from a power station to convert that energy from that waste heat into air conditioning and refrigeration. So there's opportunities there for smaller businesses and entrepreneurs in those sort of areas using that waste heat. There's also, because of the economics now, there are also opportunities for large-scale renewable energy, and the Ministry of Energy is looking has gone out to the business community. There are a lot of people responding to it, looking at bringing solar energy onto the grid, because it makes economic sense now to do it. So that they had an expression of interest process. I think there was a lot of interest expressed in it. They're now going through the process of sorting that, and they'll invite proposals from people. As that is implemented, that obviously creates opportunities for entrepreneurs as well to be part of the services around these sort of new industries which are going to be growing. So that's the grid scale. This is Trinidad is way behind the rest of the Caribbean on most of the stuff. This is a solar plant in DR. The Jamaicans have moved ahead very fast with wind and some solar as well. So we are way behind. We always thought we see us as those the energy leaders of the Caribbean, but actually we're the laggards with a lot of these things. Okay. I talked about the transport sector. I think there's a lot of opportunities in the transport sector. There was a big move to reduce the fuel subsidy by using compressed natural gas. That has created some entrepreneurial opportunities for a few people, and people have been involved in conversion to CNG. But I think, so the CNG in the middle, but there's also electric vehicles. This is going to become, I think, going to become a major area because that's the way that the world is going, around electric vehicles. It does create opportunities for entrepreneurs. It also means some people who are in existing industries who've been built up around servicing internal combustion engines are going to have to move because the industry is going to move, and so spare parts industries who are built around the internal combustion engine and mechanics, that industry might well be going away. So if I was in that industry, I'd be thinking about, well, what's the alternative service I can provide into an electric vehicle or into CNG. But then the last bit is just the traffic. Trinidad we have an appallingly bad problem with traffic, and we have to find a way of managing that. And that then also might create entrepreneurial opportunities. I see Uber. Uber has grown, quite strongly, I think, in the country in the last year or so. It's been also driven. That's the wrong pun, but been driven also by the. At last, some action being taken around drinking and driving. I think people are now, at last, getting the story about drinking and driving, so that's driving people towards Uber as well. But that creates sort of opportunities when those sort of things happen. So the transport sector, mobility, I think, is also an entrepreneurial area. People think about how they can get around this and do things a bit better. The commercial building sector, the manufacturing sector, and energy efficiency. Trinidad electricity prices are going to have to go up. It's going to happen. I think we just need to get used to that reality, and so businesses need to start saying, okay, the rate I'm paying is going to go up. What can I do to bring my bill down? Because the rate may be higher, but if you implement the right the right plans, you can bring your bill down. We have looked at some studies on the municipal building sector, so these commercial buildings, government-owned buildings. People could get 30 to 40% savings in their electricity bill from the most simple energy efficiency programs. Turning the lights out at night, fixing the holes in the air-conditioned ducting. These sort of things which people are just wasting energy at the moment. And you can reduce your bill by 30%. So electricity prices could go up by 30%, but you can have the ability to bring your bill down by the simplest measures. That creates a business opportunity for all the people who provide those services around energy efficiency. And I think that is something which there was an attempt to build that industry through a tax write-off, which was people could access, which was introduced in the law in 2010. But it had in a very typical sort of Trinidad way, I'm afraid to say. We did this thing where we passed a law, and then we didn't pass the ability to implement the law. So what it said is that you could get 150% tax write-off if you implemented an energy efficiency project done by a certified energy service company. Okay, so great idea, except there was no way to certify an energy service company, and so there's not a single certified energy service company, so nobody can access the tax credit. Now, it was a really horrible thing which was done to a lot of small businesses because people invested in setting themselves up to be able to access this, thinking they're going to get a business opportunity, and then they couldn't get it. So people, I think some people in this room I can see were rightly annoyed that this happened because it was sort of, they actually invested money and lost their investment because of it. But with the electricity prices going up, the tax credit doesn't become as relevant anymore because people are going to need to reduce it, and the economics are going to be there without the tax credit. So there's a big opportunity here created by the increasing electricity prices for small businesses to get in this field and for engineers, and there's a huge savings we can make for the country and save our gas and put it to petrochemicals instead of wasting it as we're doing at the moment. Oh, sorry. Small-scale renewable energy, also a lot of opportunities for people to implement small-scale renewable energy once we get the feed-in tariff system working. Now, that keeps being promised. I understand it's coming soon. If it does come, I think that's going to create a lot of opportunities for small businesses to, particularly in a high electricity price environment, to install solar panels and small-scale renewable energy projects as well. So that's another entrepreneurial area. The last thing I'd say is that there's also export potential in this area. We do have Trinidad companies who have exported services in these sort of energy efficiency, renewable energy area around the region, but there's a lot of space for a lot more one of the things I'm always interested in is that the transferable skills we have from our existing sort of long-term energy sector, which we can transfer into renewable energy. And one of the obvious ones is drilling. Drilling for geothermal wells is essentially the same for drilling for oil wells. So this is a project in Dominica, and there's a few of these geothermal projects going on around the region. Obviously, the Trinidad drilling companies have a good opportunity in those areas, but also generally in energy services. So we don't have to restrict ourselves to Trinidad. We can export around the region. Thank you.
So thank you, Dax. I think that was extremely insightful. Probably lots of new ideas for people in the room, highlighting the areas where in the energy sector we need to change and improve. So a lot of food for thought. Next, we have our Chief Executive Officer of Trinidad and Tobago Solid Waste Management Company. Ronald, the floor is yours.
Good morning. So I just want to start off with an overview of the waste management sector in Trinidad and Tobago. As of 2010, we generate approximately 700,000 tons of waste, 85% of which was considered recyclable. That number is expected to double in the next 10 years, so we're close to that doubling figure now. And currently, government spends about $321 million a year on waste management, and that's government alone. That doesn't include the entire private sector, which of course contributes quite significantly to that amount. When we look at the composition of waste, organics make up the major composition, 28%, followed by plastics, paper, and glass, and all those items are in fact recyclable. There's what is called a waste management hierarchy, and that hierarchy says that we need to look at reduction of waste in the first instance. What can't be reduced, we need to reuse, then to recycle, and after those things are taken into consideration, you look for energy recovery, and then finally waste disposal. What happens in Trinidad is we go straight to waste disposal, and that's where there's a significant opportunity to fulfill this hierarchy. Responsibility for waste management, municipal corporations have a responsibility for collection. Swimcall, as a state company, we're responsible for operation of 3 landfill sites. Tobago has the responsibility, THA has the responsibility for Tobago, and EMA is responsible for enforcement. And why waste management? Government's National Development Strategy, better known as Vision 2030, has as its final theme, Theme 5, placing the environment at the center of economic and social development. And that's really, I think, significant, placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. As an island state with increasing waste generation, we must look for new and innovative approaches to waste management, and waste will always be generated, so there will always be opportunities. So what are some of the existing business arrangements in the waste management sector? Currently, we have about 300 or over 300 contractors involved in waste collection for the regional corporations and for private entities. Some of those are multi-purpose companies, but a lot of companies just exist in the waste management sector. And those companies work for both government and private. Of course, these are some of the types of waste collection. This is our own equipment. We have compactors, we have tankers for liquid waste removal and so, and these are generally the types of equipment you'll find in the industry. There are several companies involved in waste processing activities. Waste processing involves converting it from the status into another more desirable one. So medical waste incineration, other types of special waste incineration, immobilization, and bioremediation. Those activities all take place in Trinidad and Tobago by various contractors and companies at this point. This is some of the waste processing equipment. So we have waste incinerators on one side, and when people think about waste incinerators, some people think of these massive plants that can power the country and so forth, and that's not necessarily the case. There are many small-scale waste incinerators that can fit in, a small room to process specific types of waste. And then we have autoclave equipment for medical waste in particular. this is another type of waste processing equipment used by Srimqual, and it's just a shredder used for volume reduction, and there are business opportunities with respect to that. And then there's the whole gamut of waste recycling, and that's something that's really where the opportunities begin to develop. So several companies are already involved in waste recycling for paper, for beverage containers, for metals, and for e-waste right now, but there are a whole host of other opportunities which I will talk about. So again, this is our waste recycling, a PET processing plant at our Port of Spain facility. So we are involved in some recycling and some processing right now. Waste upcycling, that's a concept, again, that there's a lot of potential for. This is a company, Liquor Lamp, and these are the products that it creates from simple bottles. So if you can't afford a Johnny Walker Blue, maybe you can buy a Johnny Walker Blue lamp as a substitute. So what are some of the new business opportunities? What are the untapped opportunities in the waste management sector? I spoke about the fact that composting, I spoke about the fact that organic waste represents 28% of the waste stream, and that creates a significant opportunity for composting. Organics consist of food waste, yard waste, tree trimmings, and grass cuttings, and they can easily be converted into compost either by natural or mechanized processes. So these are some home composting units that are available for sale in other countries. So again, an untapped opportunity to encourage people to get involved in composting and reducing the waste that is going into their garbage and going and ended up in the landfills. So if somebody approached me to buy a composting machine, certainly I would. And then you can upscale to these levels, static pile composting and windrow composting. It gets a little bit more technical, it gets a little bit more complicated, and of course gets a little bit more expensive, but the principle is the same. There's a huge opportunity for equipment and supplies, recycling bins. So the government is intent on recycling. They have announced that as part of the overall government plans. The government recently launched a public sector recycling program, and there's need for recycling bins for those recycling programs. So private sector is involved to some extent, and they want to be involved to a greater extent. And again, once you're doing recycling, you need to have the separate bins and the 3-compartment or the multi-compartment bins, and so to support these recycling efforts. So that creates an opportunity. Products made from recycling equipment and alternatives to single-use plastic. So there's already a few companies that supply alternatives to styrofoam, and there are similar opportunities for alternative products. Equipment and supplies, solar-powered compactors. Again, another fabulous opportunity, and it ties in with our drive for renewable energy. And so the advantage of a solar-powered compactor is that within for a particular bin, you can store so much more before you require collection. So it makes the system more efficient. Yeah, these are the examples of recycling bins. So in a lot of cases, you may have one office bin and so, but there are opportunities to have these bins at people's desks, and so to make it more convenient to recycling. If I had to walk or go to another floor to reach the recycling bin, I will tend not to recycle as opposed to having the convenience of bins such as these. Once you're talking about recycling, you need to complete the loop. And how do you complete the loop? By having products that are made from recyclable materials. So once you're creating a raw material, that raw material for recycling needs to come back into products. And again, these are some very simple but effective means of recycling. So pens made from recycled paper, and phone cases made from PET bottles. And again, those present excellent opportunities for investment and for getting involved in the recycling process. Toothbrushes made from bamboo. So we talk about single-use plastics, and we talk about the disposable items. And so toothbrushes made from bamboo presents you know, an opportunity to divert waste and to ensure longer life products and to ensure sustainable products. And so again, there's that opportunity. I saw recently selling in one of the pharmacies in Trinidad these toothbrushes, and unfortunately the toothbrush made from bamboo was packaged in a plastic packaging. So that really defeats the purpose. But the idea is, you know, we want to encourage items like this. Similarly, jute bags to get away from your single-use plastic bags, and so that needs to be encouraged. Omadat was speaking about before the session in India that is the norm, plastic bags, and so people don't regularly use, and we unfortunately have these bad habits that have been inculcated into us that we must, you know, have the plastic bags when we go shopping. And there are many more opportunities for upcycling. It represents a cost-effective means of creating new value to old products, and it requires creativity and innovation, sometimes things that are lacking from our society, and it does not usually require heavy investments. So these are upcycled products. Planters made from tires, and this was on an exhibition in Guyana recently. These are some other upcycled products. So a purse made from a car tire, how cool is that? And a clock made from game pieces. Those are the sorts of innovation and so that you can get from upcycling. And I mean, as I said, those things are usually not expensive, and there are markets for it. People will buy these things. There are people who are environmentally conscious, and we need to create that consciousness amongst people. So once we have the products, you will find the markets, I can assure you. Furniture made from pallets, another example of upcycling, and again, something that is very common in other countries and so, but we as Trinidadians haven't caught on to ideas such as this as yet. Opportunities in consultancy and public education. So besides the equipment part of it and the investment part of it, there are also opportunities in consultancy and public education, waste and environmental audits. So companies, they need to become more efficient, more energy efficient, and so how do they do that? They need people to come in and advise them on those things, and you know, there are opportunities for that. Waste management, sensitization to company staff. Again, we don't appreciate the value of waste, and we need to have companies that are set up to provide that sort of public education and employee awareness so people can do what is required from a recycling point of view. Development of games, programs, apps related to waste management. There are not enough of those. Swimcall has an Eco Island Trip board game right now, and we want to convert that, and it's quite a popular game once you play it, and we want to convert that to an app, and that's just one of the many things that you can do from an environmental point of view. And design and development of waste management and recycling public awareness campaigns. And other opportunities, chemical waste management is an area that is underdeveloped in the country, e-waste management, landfill leachate treatment, biodigestion, waste to energy, landfill gas to energy, and engineered wetlands. These are all opportunities in the waste management sector. As a country, the Minister of Planning announced recently the closure of the landfills, and so that is part of government's overall plan. But it's not just a question of closing doors, it's a question of doing the research, doing the putting things in place, the bioremediation and so forth, to fulfill that closure plan, and that's where opportunities for consultancy and for technical work comes in as well. Yep, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So just to summarize, waste management is a very extensive and wide-ranging business. The current focus on climate change and marine pollution creates an ideal opportunity for government and citizens to rethink the way we treat with waste, which has the potential to open up these opportunities. And as I said, waste will always be generated, which means that there will always be sustainable opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald, for one, staying on time. Well done. And two, hopefully everyone was taking notes, because each slide had at least one opportunity for business. So I'm hoping everyone has taken clear notes and examples. Thank you.
Last but not least, she's been patiently waiting. So we have the country manager for Microsoft, Raquel.
Hi, so I hope that you guys will indulge me on a number of different fronts. I am in the last stage, and I wouldn't want to share that experience with you today. So if you can allow me to stay seated, you know, we'll have like a bit of a fireside chat, because I really did want to sort of understand who was with us today. So how many of you are entrepreneurs? Excellent. All right. And what industries do you represent? Are you agriculture? Okay. Okay. Are you energy? Oh, okay. Surprising. And are you recycling? Lovely. We have a little bit of everything. Excellent. And in terms of how long you've been in business, more than 5 years? I love that flower, because I'm going to talk to you just in a minute. And less than 5 years, everybody else. So, okay, so I see it was about 25% said 25% said less than 5 years. Is it
Exactly 5 years.
5 years?
The others don't know.
Okay. So as introduced, my name is Raquel Moses. I'm the country manager for Microsoft. And one of the things, the mission of Microsoft is to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. And so whenever I accept a responsibility like this, like talking to entrepreneurs, I really have to think about how is my speaking to you going to have that ability to empower you to achieve more. And then I think about, well, I'm head of Microsoft. Microsoft's an old organization, it's established, and I have a job. And I'm talking to entrepreneurs, you're risking it all. So what could I possibly say to you that could inspire you and empower you to do more? Well, I'll share with you that I've actually walked in your shoes. Through several points in my career, I said, check it, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And it has been some of the most rewarding times of my life. And then, you know, you move, or you have children, or you do something else, and you decide to, and somebody comes with a great job offer, and you're like, But I don't want you to take lightly that my secure position misunderstands the absolute braveness that is required to do what you're doing. And I think it's so very exciting. One of the things that inspired me recently, and I think Warren mentioned it, when our new president was inaugurated, he's talking about how much, you know, as much as we need to then at least seem like dark times, there are so many things to be optimistic about. And one of the things that I think is really important for us to think about is that, because you mentioned it again about, well, the government is about to do this and the government is about to do that. The government cannot do it alone. So one of the things that needs to resonate within your business is that it needs to be self-sustainable, so that anything that the government does do is an upside for you. So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is 3 examples of how digital transformation and how technology has the ability to improve your value chain. And I'm going to speak to each of the 3 industries so that it gives you a sense as to what's possible. Now, there's a unique opportunity in digital transformation. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term digital transformation, because it's what all of the technology companies are talking about. And we always like to believe that everybody knows what we're talking about. It's about moving from a place of doing things manually and allowing technology to wholesale improve your business. So it means that you rely on technology to become more efficient, to reach more people, to become more effective, that you use the tools that are necessary so that as an entrepreneur, you're looking at the high end of your business versus having to do a lot of manual tasks. And we're in a very unique position right now where, you know, technology has the ability to empower, it has the ability to improve design, it has the ability to build trust, albeit I know what's happening on Facebook this week, not so much, but you know, it still sort of highlights for us how technology impacts our daily lives. And as I came in, I had a chat with an entrepreneur that I deeply respect, because she honest to a fault, and I love it. I love it. I love people who just speak their truth. And one of your directors, Laura Control Thomas. And so she was reminding me about a speech that I gave at Amtown, where I was talking about Estonia and what they had done to completely just innovate their economy. And one of the rules that the government put in place was it took one person, so at any government agency, one person, any person that you dealt with, had the empowerment to tell you yes. But if they were going to tell you no for any service or any approval that you required, they needed to get somebody else. So 2 to say no, 1 to say yes. And I thought that that was so powerful, and she was reminding me about it. And I said, you know, it's one of those things that just shakes you to your core. Oh, I just suddenly when I'm not touching you.
I'm like, my husband will hear of this. Yes. So you know, and it was so revolutionary in terms of the thought process. But as entrepreneurs, you have that power. You can deliver service with that mindset. Any customer who comes to you, you have the ability to say, yes. Yes, I will do this for you. Yes, I will make this easy. Yes, you will pay what it costs to deliver the service in that way. But yes, first, rather than approaching things from a mindset of, no, and I can't help you, or go figure it out, or I remember there was a service I was dealing with recently where in my personal capacity, I messaged somebody on Instagram asking about something for the company, but they didn't know what company, and they didn't know how many people, and they had no sense of scale. And they were like, oh, well, what you can do is you can email us, and we'll send you back some information. And I'm like, first of all, you might want to have a sense of what kind of scale am I talking about? Second of all, if I am trying to close a sale with you now, I'm trying to buy from you today, then you shouldn't be asking me to email you. You should be trying to get my email address, my phone number, my whatever else it is, to try and close the sale with me. So don't lose the opportunity. And I immediately lost interest, because this isn't the kind of customer service experience that I'm looking for. I'm certainly willing to pay for the service that I want, but you know, it's just a mindset that is necessary to be able to take things forward. So, and I do want to also comfort you in, I'm from a family of entrepreneurs, my immediate family. My daughter has started an online business in tourism. My husband is a sole architect. And I see how they both have the ability to expand and contract and to use technology to really reach every day. And of course I'm their chief consultant. But you know, it isn't that I'm not sort of in it and taking the risk as well, because it's a part of who we are, and my parents were entrepreneurs. So you know, it's part of my fiber, and I will return to entrepreneurship, I assure you. So when we look at digital transformation, it has all kinds of implications in a number of different industries. And I love the 3 industries selected. I wish that when we think about agriculture, we're thinking about agriculture a little bit bigger. We're thinking about agriculture in terms of tourism, and not just agriculture for the sake of agriculture. Yes, we need to feed ourselves, but we need to think about, and I loved the Shell program, because it's about export and teaching them how to export, because that is the key. You are going to be a part of what saves Trinidad and Tobago. The small businesses provide the jobs. The small businesses are the ones who export. And the small businesses have the agility to innovate, which is what we need right now. So when we look at, you know, digital transformation in agriculture, for example, and the kinds of things that we've seen. Who's heard of 1776? The people who should, Dr. Swift and et cetera. 1776 is a US organization that provides venture capital to startups. And they are renowned for creating, you know, doing huge investments and really helping startups to leapfrog and to really jump from where they are to where they need to go. And 1776 had asked me some years ago, not that long ago, to judge a competition that was taking place here. So the Caribbean competition was held in Trinidad. And these are the kinds of things that you need to be familiar with, because Great Shell is doing a program, but that doesn't mean that you can't get funding and support from a number of different places. But one of the projects that won was an agriculture project where they were using the Internet of Things, which you would have heard of before. So they were using these sensors in soil to be able to determine when the soil needed watering versus going through just the motion of irrigating the soil on a regular basis. That as a small business allows you, or that as an entrepreneur, using tools like that, which are now democratized and easy to access, makes you very agile and very competitive. And so those are the kinds of things that they've rolled out in Jamaica, they're rolling out in a number of other places. There are all kinds of technologies that are being applied to agriculture that can allow you to do more with less, to be more competitive, to create more from a smaller footprint. And so that's the kind of thing that we're seeing in agriculture, and we want to see it applied to agriculture for greater export. You know, when we were looking at India and the kinds of things that they had done and how much they were able to produce. And you know, India is one of the compact places. You know, you're like 1.3 billion people. You know, we're 1.3 million people. China has more millionaires than we have people. Do you realize that? You know, from a scale standpoint, we are small. But because of the democratization of technology, we have so much access. And so now what used to be, you know, as somebody who wanted lots of computing power, for example, you needed to go out and you needed to buy a server and you needed to hire an IT manager and you needed to do 100 different things that cost millions and millions of dollars. Now you can buy technology like a utility. You can pay for what you use. So there are fewer impediments to you achieving more at this time. When we look at digital transformation in energy, there's a solution that we have, and it's a artificial intelligence solution. And it's something that I'm very excited about. One of the big things that you see in energy is that they always need to, you know, everything's about safety. You know, you always have to give the safety briefing, and you know, everybody needs to wear their hard hat. But it used to be, for example, if you wanted to go into a business and offer security services, you needed to have this fleet of people available to you to be able to offer that service to an energy company. You don't need that anymore. Artificial intelligence allows a single person to set up, use cameras that are already installed, and you can, the artificial intelligence can tell somebody's taken off their hard hat. That's an alert. Notify someone. Someone's not wearing the proper uniform. Someone is breaching the perimeter of the site. And so as an entrepreneur, you have the ability to use tools like this and compete with the bigger guys because it now gives you scale. And so these are the kinds of things that you can tap into, and all of the analytics behind it are in the cloud, so you don't need to sort of invest in setting up, you know, wholesale technology to offer these kinds of services. And I love that story from Shell about the guy. What was the value of the contract? Some 24 million or something insane, you know, for 3 guys. And that could be you. But you need to think outside of the boundaries of Trinidad and Tobago because there is so much more available. In recycling, you know, recycling itself being a sort of a source of new innovation, there is so much that's happening in recycling. You know, I read an article recently about this young lady who was making boots out of throwaway gum on the side of the road. And there are so many things that we can do with, there's another thing, another group that's cleaning up the ocean. If you're on Instagram at all, they spam you with their ads. Cleaning up the ocean and creating these beaded bracelets. I spoke at an event at the tourism industry recently. There was a woman making absolutely gorgeous earrings. If I had thought about it, I would have bought a pair and worn them today, from newspaper. And this is the kind of talent that we produce here, but it's the kind of possibilities that we are able to create as well. And these are goods that we can create and export. So use the technology to be a springboard for you, to do more with less, to appear bigger. You know, I see some of the people who contact my daughter about her business, and they think that she's this big enterprise because how she looks to the public. It looks like she has 20 members of staff, and somebody was sending their resume, they want to work for her, and she thought, hilarious, who thinks I have money to pay people? But, you know, it's about creating that perception. And there's so many tools that are available. LinkedIn, for example, really untapped resource to be able to reach people. But don't spam people on LinkedIn, I beg you. And particularly do not spam me. LinkedIn needs to be something that you use because we've had an interaction, and based on that interaction, you now have the basis to say, I would like to be connected to you. If everybody connected to everybody on LinkedIn, LinkedIn wouldn't be important, because then we're all connected. So there has to be some basis for the connectivity. But use the tools, use the social media, look at the kinds of technologies that are available, do your research. Empower yourself to achieve more. You know, be inspired. Listen to our new president. I mean, gosh, you know, I'm a Hilarian as well, so I have to admit that. I knew she'd be fabulous. but you know, these are the times when countries, Dax had mentioned, he said Jamaica is so far ahead of us in terms of energy and using technology. And it's funny, the reason they're ahead of us, why do you think? Is it that they have more money? No. Huh? Exactly. Who said that? Right. Absolutely. They went through hard times. This is our teaching moment. This is our hard time that is going to get us to do the things that we were always meant to do, that unfortunately the oil spoiled us from doing. So this is the time where the entrepreneurs who come out of this time are going to be strong. The Richard Bransons of the world started selling records out of the trunk of his car. You are the billionaires of the future. And so it's really, really important that we...
That was the, you know.
Oh, okay. That was the signal. It's really, really important that we use the tools that are available to be able to springboard to the next place. And so hopefully, with this very high-level surface of information, I have, if it's just one person in this room, helped to empower you to achieve more, because I think that we are capable of so much more. And this is our moment. This is, as Trinidad and Tobago, it is our moment. And I'm really excited to see what happens next. Thank you.
I think with those words, Raquel, with that energy, you've probably inspired more than one person in the room, because I feel the energy and I feel inspired. So thank you for that. That was
And I'm glad I could do it from sitting down.
Taking time out of their schedules to be part of this discussion. Thank you also to Analia, our finance manager, who also took time from her schedule to be here with us today and act as the moderator for our panel discussion. Thank you to Nirmala Miraj from the Arthur Longjack Graduate School of Business and the rest of her team for their generous offer of the use of the venue today. Without them, we wouldn't be here in the comfortable facilities. Thank you to the YBTT board, especially Mrs. Dale Auckland and other members of the board and the YBTT team, who is led by Chevron Collins, who we would have heard from earlier today.